Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. We both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome back, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going really good. So, in the beginning of every single one of these weeks, as I'm leading up to this, I'm like, am I going to have enough content to fill up these shows? And inevitably, every Thursday, I'm drowning in content. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So, once again, I'm going to lead off with our micropayment solution Dropp. A little bit later on in Shark Bites, I'm going to be talking about how the fact that just because a project is quiet, that doesn't mean that they're in decline. And Dropp is a perfect example of this. They were quiet for a really long time, and now they're coming with all kinds of new features, announcements, and news that is really going to help build out our ecosystem. And of course, I caught up with Sushil. He's the CEO of Dropp to give us some insights into the new features that they're bringing to market this week. Sushil, welcome back. It hasn't been very long.
No, it hasn't been. And we're really looking forward to this new update that we have. It's been work that's been going on for months, and we're really anxious to get this out now.
I'm definitely excited for these features. Can you describe the new capabilities that Dropp is bringing to market?
Sure. So basically, what we have done, Drop enables payments in fiat, which is US dollars, and in digital currencies, right? And when it comes to digital currencies, we have always had HBAR as one of the currency by which you can make payments. And then we had a stable currency from Circle, USDC. What we have done in this new upgrade that's coming out is we've expanded the USDC possibilities, the options. So whether you have USDC on Hedera, whether you have USDC on Ethereum, if you have USDC in Avalanche or Polygon, you should be able to make payments to the merchant. Dropp is on Hedera platform. The entire infrastructure is built on Hedera. So we've given you the options to the consumer so they can make a payment from wherever they are, whichever blockchain they're using. For now, for this upgrade, we have, of course, we always had Hedera. Now we have Ethereum, Avalanche, and Polygon as the first upgrade that we're going to come out. So it's a multi-blockchain. That's the best way I can describe. No matter which chain you're using, as long as you have the token USDC, you should be able to make a payment.
All right. So why did Dropp need or want to add these features?
So we've been working on this for a while, and I'll describe that. But I think the most important part of it is the pool of USDC tokens on Hedera is only so much. It's in millions, right? And the entire pool of USDC, which is a 30 or more billion dollars, is mostly located on Ethereum. And then there are pools of USDC token on other chains. So Circle has done an incredible job of expanding their market. We love working with them. It's an incredible company, an incredible product that they have. But then there is pools of USDC, some on Ethereum, and then there are other chains. So and we do want to reach out to those customers, whether they are on Ethereum or they're in Polygon, so for them to make the payment. So what we've done is as I said, we've created a bridge. And this would essentially mean you don't need to have USDC just on Hedera to make a payment. You could be anywhere, right? So basically, those tokens sort of automatically get into the Hedera pool base, kind of increases the Hedera pool base. But the real purpose is to make payments on Drop. So we've expanded, we've given more liquidity. That's what we've done.
So it's critical to tap into those liquidity pools of those other networks. So whenever somebody makes a payment using, we'll say, USDC on Ethereum, that is going to end up as USDC on the Hedera network?
Yeah. So the way it would work is you have to be registered with Drop. You need to be a Drop customer, right? And that's why you're making a payment through Drop. So the way it would work is, let's say I have an Exodus or some wallet which has USDC Ethereum, the USDC token in Ethereum, and you want to make a transfer, you want to make a payment on Drop wallet, and you're a Drop customer. We give you a transfer method by which we give you an address in Ethereum where you make a transfer, and that get automatically converted into a Hedera USDC token, right? And that token shows up in your Drop wallet. So all of our work was building the user experience on our digital wallet to make it really, really secure and also give you the feeling of security because you're really transferring tokens, right? And we'll show you the interface very soon. But basically, you could be on any of those chains. We give you an address, you scan it, and you make that transfer to that address. It's a Circle/Drop address, and on your chain, and that automatically gets converted, and you get all those statuses saying it's now moved to Hedera, and Hedera meaning the Dropp wallet. Okay.
Sushil, I absolutely love it. So, how long have you been working with Circle? And for anyone that doesn't know, Circle is the global financial technology company that, in partnership with Coinbase, is responsible for the USDC stablecoin. So, again, how long have you been working with them?
Yeah, we've actually started our conversation in 2021, late 2021, and again, Circle is one of the most standard. It's like the gold standard of stablecoin right now. It's a pretty compliant company, and they do a thorough check on everyone, which is what we all want as a stablecoin. So we started working at tail end of December of 2021. We first went live. We've been live. We probably were the first wallet to have USDC HBAR in the month of April of 2022, and then we had Ethereum. And what has happened in the last 6 months is Circle has changed their API. They have an absolutely new infrastructure, much faster, much quicker. So we have now done a complete migration. In the process of migrating to the new infrastructure, new APIs, basically, we didn't have to. They did the infrastructure. We used the new APIs. They also had APIs for different blockchains, and we had already built a universal standard interface. So for us to add new blockchains now, it's a couple of weeks. We're going to keep adding more blockchains. So we've been working with them for the last 2 years.
I see. So, are these the only blockchains, or are you looking to add more as we go forward?
We will. This has been a good exercise in the last 3 months of adding these chains. We want to see the feedback, but I think the plan is to go after other pools. The next pool we might go after is Solana. It's a good pool size. We are also looking at Arbitrum, which has got a large pool size. And then slowly, based on the consumer feedback and merchant feedback, really the platform is also meant for the merchant, because we've given merchants a way to accumulate USDC or get payments in USDC. And we've also given all of them the way to bring it back to whatever chain they want to. So I, as a merchant, could get paid in USDC HBAR, but at some point I want to convert that to US dollars, right? Or whatever currency you want. We've given them a method by which they could also transfer it back to Ethereum, to their, let's say, their Coinbase wallet, and convert that to dollars, right? So we just answering your question. I think the next chain most probably is going to be Solana, but we'll announce it as we get that. We're just getting ready for this release. So.
I see. Like I said before, it's critical to tap into these other liquidity pools.
Yes.
So, Sushil, what's next for Dropp?
So what has happened I would say in 2023 is we've completed the core infrastructure. The core infrastructure of Dropp, which is the payment infrastructure, has been built. And now we have multiple teams in Dropp working on different projects. One of the team was working on the Web3 interface, which is the USDC. So you should expect, or we are also excited about this, we're expecting almost every couple of weeks there'll be some major upgrades that we're going to announce. So I would say in the next 2 weeks we have another announcement that's going to come out, and then 2 weeks from now. So at least till the end of October, everything that's been worked on by multiple teams in Dropp should be coming out. There are some major upgrades that are coming out. I would say not upgrades, capabilities, absolute new functions. Functions that the consumer would like, and some functions with the merchant would really like. So we're working on lots of stuff right now.
Well, Sushil, you keep adding those features and making announcements, and we'll keep covering it. Thank you so much for swinging by today and telling us about it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for inviting me.
So yeah, Dropp is absolutely hitting on all cylinders. This is one area that we certainly need some improvement in the Hedera ecosystem. CoinMan actually asked Elaine about this recently, about the lack of stablecoin volume that we have, or liquidity that we have within the ecosystem. And this is certainly a good way to get some liquidity that is on other networks over into the Hedera ecosystem. But Dropp has gotten some other attention recently from CoinDesk. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so CoinDesk initially covered the FedNow showcase news of the Dropp, alongside the likes of Cointelegraph, Decrypt, and the wider Web3 audience. But what I like about CoinDesk here is they sort of took it the step further. They thought, we can get the CEO on, we can take him onto our platform, and we can really get the inside story. We don't just want to be pumping speculation. We want to know exactly what's happening and why it's happening. So Sushil appeared on the Hash, which is the CoinDesk morning podcast. They sort of asked him about everything that was going on, whether that was Hedera, whether that was Federal Reserve, so on and so forth. And I like this for twofold reasons. It enabled Sushil from Dropp, a relatively small startup at the moment, to get really a great platform to show exactly the amazing things they're doing, be that WordPress, be that Shopify, and now, of course, the FedNow showcase. But also alongside Sushil's own work, it enabled Sushil to do a great job of representing what Hedera is and why they chose Hedera. And the things that he really drove home were, of course, the governing council, the stability and security that ensures institutions like FedNow, but also the power of the hash graph itself. And I really loved what he said when he said it was the easiest choice they had to make out of anything. In the whole history of their sort of platform, the easiest choice was Hedera and the hash graph. And I think for CoinDesk to hear that, to cover us for something more than a new governing council membership announcement, this really drives home the full breadth of why institutions are choosing Hedera. And actually, excitingly, since that, I've been reached out to on LinkedIn from one of the CoinDesk reporters saying they want to work closer with us on these kind of announcements. So hopefully that'll be the start of a more sort of fortuitous or a stronger relationship with CoinDesk for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have that example with CoinDesk, but we have a lot of those examples in social media in general, right? We're doing really well. One of the things, Lunar Crush, on multiple occasions that we've been highlighted as the top coin. And we had a great chart put out by the House of Chimera, which also, again, shows social media engagement. Zep, you follow this stuff all the time. What are your thoughts on how we're progressing in the social media landscape?
In the first bull run, or the one that I was present for HBAR anyway, sort of 2021, it was amazing that we got as far as we did as a community without trending ever. We never really saw HBAR trending. And if it was, maybe it had sort of 5,000 to 10,000 tweets. And it was more localized. It was sort of trending for you page. There's a difference between the trending page, i.e. business and finance, and the stuff that's sort of trending within your own bubble. And in the past sort of 3, 4, 5 months, we've seen HBAR trending more regularly than not almost. We had 4 days of HBAR trending after FedNow with sort of 200 to 500K tweets each time. Before that, in the months before, we've captured that again and again, 50,000 plus tweets. And that's something that we've never seen before in our community. Of course, there's different elements at play. Some of it's to do with bots. But every chain, I must say, also has this thing. You click through the hashtag and see the bots. And the reason why the bots choose to permeate a hashtag is because the hashtag is being engaged by the communities that uphold it. So these bots want to have the most effective hashtags. And so HBAR is one of the ones they choose because they know that we're very active, we'll continue to share content, and there's always people looking at that hashtag, especially at the moment. So when you combine, I think, these social metrics, and you combine that with the news, and you combine that with the momentum of the community, and just how reactive I think we are becoming again as a wider community, I think the future is going to bode very well. It's up to us to maintain that momentum. It's up to, the foundation, the Hashgraph Association, the community developers, Hedera, to keep the announcements going, to keep the use cases coming out, which of course they will. We know that without a doubt. And so it really is our job as the sort of community arm, as the wider community, to keep that going. And I think we'll be in a very strong position in the future if we do.
Yeah, it seems like the trends are moving in the right direction, but we do run into some issues that we just have to deal with when we get into this. And one of them is going to be pushback on information. There's going to be misinformation put out there. We actually did a Twitter space this past Wednesday. We had Zenobia from Swirlds Lab. We had Ed Marquez. We had Brandon D., so a community member that is very active and has some really good thoughts around this. And we also had Juan Ibanez from UCL. Now, that's one of the things, and it's kind of surprising to me. We put up this chart all the time of the efficiency that Hedera has, and we get an awful lot of pushback because there is a huge difference between Hedera and other networks. But that's not Swirlds Labs. That's not Hedera. That's not the HBAR Foundation putting that information out. That was a paper done by UCL. And it is funny because I've dug through that paper really thoroughly, and it seems like it's really well done. Juan did a great job backing up the information in that paper in a really long thread, just explaining everything. And he kind of ran through some of that in this Twitter space. So I wanted to grab some highlights from it to have Juan actually back up his own work. Juan, I have a tweet pinned to this space where you did a masterful job addressing criticism of a research paper that UCL did. First, I'd like you, since most of the people on the panel, our community is familiar with, I would like you to introduce yourself real quick, but then can you tell us a bit about that paper? What made you decide to write that thread, and what were your goals with engaging with the public in that public forum? So start off just real quick, introducing yourself, and then we'll revisit those other questions.
All right. I hope you can hear me well. Okay, perfect. My name is Juan. I'm a researcher at UCL, University College London. I also work at the DLT Science Foundation. I've been working in blockchain and sustainability for a few years already. In fact, I was working on sustainability before I worked in blockchain. So I've been making the intersection of these two areas the focus of my work. And I always try to learn something more and share what I've learned. So the other questions were, what was the...
First, just tell us a little bit about what the paper was and what made you decide to write that thread in that public forum.
So a few years ago, we discovered that there was a gap in the literature for blockchain energy consumption, and we tried to develop at least a starting point for a methodology that would allow for comparisons of energy consumption metrics across many blockchains, and also to make some basic fairness adjustments to the comparisons, like considering the throughput in the metrics used. We saw that this had not been done yet, and we wrote this paper, which has been published by an IEEE journal a few years ago. But the data was getting old. So this year, with a colleague of mine, Francisco, we decided to write a new paper, updating the data, and not just updating the data, but also improving the methodology, expanding the scope of the blockchains analyzed. And we released the working paper. It's online. We're working towards publication. And usually when you write papers on blockchain matters, it can get picked up a lot. So people are likely to talk about this because there's communities behind your objects of study.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you were just addressing some criticism in the space. And what were your goals in writing that response in this public forum of Twitter?
Oh, yeah. Well, so it had come to my mind that to my attention that there were some criticisms based on the paper, or maybe on marketing materials based on the paper. And so I thought, well, since this was getting a lot of diffusion, it would be good to write about it. And also, I think picking up on what has been said before, picking up on the criticism in a respectful way, because there was, sometimes considered attacks, and I think we successfully converted those attacks into questions that we could answer. So I think the goal of this was to reconduct the conversation to a proper conversation. I think we got a very good reaction, right? I've seen some of the former critics saying, you know what, I think this is the kind of discourse that we need in the space, and so on. And I'm very happy about it. And I think we managed to get a point across, right? Initially, some people were saying, oh, well, this is a garbage study. The numbers are manipulated. The metrics are disingenuous. And actually, well, no, they are not, right? Like the numbers are real, the metrics, they are quite fair. And if you can improve our work, please go ahead and do it. Here is the GitHub repo. You can clone it. You can do, and we'd love to see how you can do this better. In fact, last week I got a notification that a student in Germany, a master's student in Germany, had made his dissertation based on our paper, expanding the methodology. In this case, it was focused on the case of Ethereum. And they were like, okay, this is a good methodology. I'm going to add this and this to account for some nuances within the specificity of Ethereum, and I don't have to compare across many blockchains. I can be a bit more sophisticated here and there, and the result was very good. Like I'm really happy that they did that, and I have written to the author congratulating them, And I think that is the sort of discourse that we need. At the end of the day, I think it's about having a productive conversation.
Well, Juan, it was a great example for the rest of the Hedera community on how to start that conversation in a professional way. So we certainly appreciate it. Juan, I want to go to you on this next one because you have to do this professionally to make sure that your work is done in the right way. Now, we all have biases. How should we deal with our own bias and remain objective, as objective as possible when determining what the truth is and then engaging with the rest of the world once we've formed our opinions or whatever the facts are?
That's a question. I'm going to struggle answering that one without sounding too philosophical. I guess that, and sorry if this is a bit abstract, but in the context of scientific research, something is true with respect to the evidence and your cropping of the reality and the assumptions that you're taking. For instance, when we write a paper on blockchain energy consumption, some people will come and say, "Oh well, but you're not considering, I don't know, centralization. You're not considering transaction speed. You're not considering the complexity of the transactions. You're not considering such and such." And that's right. There's a lot of things we're not considering. The problem is the broader our model is, the less sophisticated we can be, right? At the same time, some people are going to come and say, "Oh well, you should take into account that this blockchain has this particularity and this other particularity," and we can do that, but we lose generalizability. So in this context, what is true? Well, it depends on the level of generalizability you're using, and for that, the assumptions are maybe right, maybe wrong, maybe useful, even if they are right. So you need to crop reality. You need to focus on a part of reality and work based on defined assumptions, saying this is our goal, and make everything explicit, everything transparent. Try to give everyone else the tools to improve upon your work. I think that the worst form of bias is the bias that is not self-aware. So when you are writing about something and you're not clarifying where you're coming from, when you're not clarifying the limitations of what you're saying, then you are packaging a partial truth and a useful truth as a general truth that is like holds in all contexts. That's not how science works. Now, of course, then when you're going to decide, I don't know, like what crypto to buy, where to invest, well, you'll need to make a decision. But from the point of view of science, we focus on unlimited questions. So I think it's a matter of transparency and openness to answering questions. I think it's a part of that as well. I think that's also why we came to talk about this paper on Twitter, which is not usually required for a paper. But in this case, there's a huge community or a set of communities debating this issue. And the paper, the academic research sits in a completely different world. Even if the paper has like great assumptions, great work, a great methodology, it's not talking in this realm of discourse. So crossing that bridge and being able to take questions in a different space, in a different environment, even of things that were already present in your research, I think that also helps to that transparency. So bias is inevitable, but probably you're closer to scientificity and to truth when you are transparent and when you are open.
So, Zep, it was great hearing from Juan there, his philosophy around that, how academics just think about their information. And I do trust that paper, and it's a place to start. I have been doing some digging through other communities in their social threads, and some of the things they put out can be difficult to believe. I saw one thing on one platform and it was claiming that the market cap of that platform, of that token, was going to go to $800 trillion. To put that into perspective, the US dollar M2 money supply is at about $20 trillion. And of course, much of the world trade is done in US dollars. So to put those kind of numbers out, it really isn't reasonable. At least on this channel, we're going to try to go back to the facts. When we do give opinions, we're going to make them as reasonable as possible. You don't want to live in a world where these crypto networks have $800 trillion market caps. That means that we've gone through really nasty hyperinflation. Either way, when we dig through all these news stories, we're going to try to give you the facts as they're stated from reliable sources. So it's absolutely great to have these respected voices like Juan. And of course, we have another really respected voice in this space with Rob Allen. So we have a great episode of Shark Bites this week. So let's listen in. Welcome back, Rob.
Hey, Brandon, how's it going?
It's going really good. Of course, we had a really exciting week last week, but I think that's going to continue going forward. We're going to start off with a question from Troy BR79. He asked, could you go into the difference between Guardian and Dovu? It seems Dovu lost a lot of steam, both as a project and a token. He goes on to ask, is there a Guardian token? I do want to say that just because a token price has gone down or a project is quiet, that does not mean that they're losing steam. We saw that with Dropp. They had been quiet for a really long time, and now they're coming out with all kinds of stuff. But what are your general thoughts around this, Rob?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Dovu is one of the OG projects in the Guardian ecosystem. They're an amazing project. I don't think they're losing steam at all. You just need to look at their roadmap, the contributions they're making to the open source repositories around Guardian. Matt Smithers is one of the legends and stars of the ecosystem here. So he contributes so much with his team. So no, there's no steam being lost on the Dovu side. Dovu versus Guardian. We talk a lot about Guardian tokens, but there is no Guardian token. The Guardian is an open source technology stack, which Wares and the Sustainable Impact Fund and Swells Labs have invested in over the last couple of years. And it's at the heart of the Guardian ecosystem. What it is a technology that utilizes the Hedera Consensus Service and Hedera Token Service and runs effectively a policy workflow engine. Policy being a set of rules, and those rules are matched to data that is provided to it and digital signatures against that data. What that does is it builds this chain of trust of all the data that's being collected and the right people are signing it off. And that chain of trust, all of that proven, verifiable, auditable data, because we're using Hedera Consensus Service for all those data points, is tokenized. So a Guardian token is a token that is produced by the Guardian technology based on a rule set, a blueprint, if you like, we call it the policy, and all the associated data. Now, there's a couple of important points about this. The Guardian token is based on a standard. And one of the first things that we did was work within the Interwork Alliance to define the token taxonomy framework. And the token taxonomy framework, the TTF, is the first standard of its type. It defines how tokens should look, the hierarchy of attributes. And sustainability was the first instance of that token type, if you like, token taxonomy. And that's what the Guardian creates. A standardized token based on data that aligns with this rule set or blueprint or policy. Now, the very first way we're using it is within what we refer to as the Hedera Guardian ecosystem for ESG and sustainability use cases. So that data that is collected in this instance is aligned with carbon projects or biodiversity projects or combinations of the two, or water projects. I'm talking about reef credits now for the Great Barrier Reef. So there's all sorts of ways that data can be collected. And within ESG and sustainability space, those projects tend to be aligned with methodologies. And the methodologies are signed off by the world standards bodies for such things like Vera and Gold Standard. So we're working with all of these parties to define rule sets that can be translated into policies, which then the Guardian can tokenize. So that's the first thing. But the Guardian is this open source technology stack, and it is agnostic of the data or the policies, the blueprints that it works on. So we can see, and I'm starting to see, innovative other uses of this technology stack for other types of token. And they're still standardized tokens. They're still conform to the token taxonomy framework. But those could be real-world asset tokenization. I myself have done it with wine bottles, with the provenance of the creation of that product, along with the emissions tracking of the supply chain that it's part of. So it has broader applicability than just sustainability, but that's where we're focusing right now. And the Sustainable Impact Fund and THA and all the other ecosystem organizations are really focused on building out this Guardian ecosystem. And when we talk about the ecosystem, these are all the participants and players that utilize these standardized tokens. So the Totem Earth Marketplace, for example, is an AI-driven marketplace that matches supply and demand for these types of token. Solid World DAO, Evercity are part of the financing flywheel for getting more finance into these projects, which will then become tokenized. So this is a huge endeavor, and we are super excited about the progress that we've made since COP27 last November, and all of the amazing things that we're going to be presenting to COP28 this year in Dubai. So that's Guardian. Dovu, as I've said, is this OG project which does have its own token. So the Dove coin, which actually originated in Ethereum, and the Dovu team, for all the right reasons, came across to Hedera. They have a marketplace. They are contributing to the Guardian technology. They're tokenizing a range of methodologies which are related to regenerative farming and carbon sequestration in land. But their Dove coin is also, and it's just been announced in the last month or so, part of a new DAO initiative that Dovu are driving. So community-driven voting on-chain, on Ledger, utilizing the Dove coin that you can buy and sell on SourceSwap and our other dexes. So that they're truly embracing the Web3 future, and their roadmap, as I've said, is pretty impressive. And the way that they're contributing to the wider Hedera ecosystem as well as Guardian suggests that they've got a lot of other tricks up their sleeves to come.
Well, our entire environmental ecosystem is doing really well. We also call it the Guardian ecosystem, and Dove is part of that. And it's all going up and to the right. So I think it's going to do well in the long term.
Absolutely.
The next one I have, I'm actually going to take this one. So Crypto Creatine on Twitter asks, when the 50 billion max supply is in circulation, and he's referring to the HBAR, is it true that there can be a vote by the governing council members to increase the supply? What would the benefit be of increasing supply? Or should I say, who would benefit most? All right, so to start, all of this is software, right? All of these different networks have the ability to change that software. They put in their own governance to do so. So for example, Bitcoin, to make a change in their supply, it could happen. What they would have to do is 50% of the hash rate, the miners out there, would have to agree to make that change. It would be very difficult to do, but actually, the way it's set up right now, you could have 3 or 4 mining pools that make up 50% of that hash rate and could theoretically make that change. Wouldn't be easy, but it is possible. It is also possible with Hedera, but our governance is done a little bit differently. We have the governing council. And what I'm going to put up right now gives some examples. It's not exhaustive. It doesn't include everything, including changing supply, but it gives examples of certain things, changes that could be made to the network or Hedera itself, and what kind of a vote it would take. Some of the things might just take a simple majority. 50% or more of the governing council members who have an equal weighted vote could vote for something. Some of the things take a supermajority. So it takes 2/3 vote. So right now, out of the 29 council members that we have, it would take 20 of those council members. There's one thing on here that takes 80%. So a higher bar. The bar to change supply on Hedera is the highest bar. It takes 100% unanimous decision by all the council members to make a change in supply. And that's not just increasing supply. That could be decreasing supply or burning tokens as well. But that's a very high bar, especially on such a contentious thing as changing supply. So I already think that it would be almost impossible to change the supply. But there's another barrier in place as well. Swirled, the only permanent council member, so that's the company that was founded by Mance Harmon and Lehman Baird, the founders of Hedera, they have stated that they are a permanent no vote on changing supply. So I think the bar is very high for a lot of networks like Bitcoin out there to make a change like that. Now, there were some changes made to supply or the way they burn tokens in the Ethereum network. So it is possible, but it's pretty difficult, especially to do it in any kind of nefarious or a way that would impact their token holders in a negative way. But the bar for Hedera is that much higher. So the second part of the question, who would it benefit by increasing the supply? Well, we can look at this both ways. Who would it impact if you were burning tokens? So if you were burning tokens, number one, they would have to get a hold of the tokens. And I'm assuming here it's the governing council treasury that would be trying to burn the tokens. So they would have to get those tokens and then burn them. Well, it would certainly be negative if they burn those tokens. They would have less resources to use doing all the things that they do. If you increase supply, depending on who had those tokens, who got those tokens, that's who would benefit. If it was the council members themselves, of course, then they might have more resources, but that's not potentially, if they did it, which I don't think it's even possible, but if they were to do it, they could also distribute those to all the token holders evenly, something along those lines, and then the token holders would benefit. But again, I don't think it's something we have to be concerned with because of those controls that I covered. Rob, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was one of the things that was first mentioned, in that momentous event when Manson Lehman minted the 50 billion tokens. When you're constituting an organization such as Hedera, as the organization as we now know it with the governing council, this permanent no vote couldn't have been stated more positively. 50 billion is all we believe we will ever need. And that was kind of misunderstood, I think, at the time. We had a 15-year distribution roadmap for those 50 billion tokens. That's accelerated quite a lot, which I think is a good thing. We're probably 2/3 through now, I think about 33 billion in circulation. The problem, it's a good problem to have, but the problem with having a 100-year company is you don't know what you don't know. So you need to constitute the right governance mechanisms to allow for things that might happen in the future that you don't necessarily know. As you say, all chains have that mechanism to mint more. The algorithm on Bitcoin could be changed if the core developers and the users of the network and the hash power voters so choose. So there's always a way. I don't believe that there would be any way that a nefarious change to that 50 billion would ever happen. Not having sat on the governing council, not knowing the inner workings of the organization, the ecosystem, and not knowing Manson Lehman's mind. They truly believe that that's the tokens that we will ever need. And of course, there'll be we can go down to 10 decimal places. So there's a lot of fractions of HBAR that could potentially grow in value, and that's the whole point. With having an inflationary or deflationary token economy is really important to the price, and the price actually equates to security on the network, and that's all that Lehman and Mance care about, really. In terms of the token distribution, it's how does a proof of stake network maintain its security over 100 years when we'll all be gone, right? So Hedera will still be there when we're no longer there. Founders, founding partners, the governing council members will have changed many, many times during the lifetime of the network. But you need to constitute the right rules up front to allow for those things that we don't know yet. And who knows that there might be conditions where that is possible. So you've got to allow for that. But actually, I wouldn't be at all surprised if Manson Lehman put in their wills, no more than 50 billion ever, and enshrine that on ledger for the swirls, their descendants who continue to run swirls after we are all gone. It's not something I'm particularly worried about at the moment.
This is it. We are about to launch the Hedera mainnet and mint 50 billion HBARs. There will never be another HBAR. This is it. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's do it. All right. That's it.
So the next one comes from the original HBARbarian, Coinman. He says, in a Medium article about the not centralized pilot utilizing Hedera in the Reserve Bank of Australia CBDC pilot scheme, Rob uses the term CBDC collateralized stablecoin. Can Rob elaborate on this? Presumably an HTS coin is created that is backed 1-to-1 with a digital version of the Aussie dollar. Thoughts on this one, Rob?
Yeah, great question, Coinman. Thank you very much. So a bit of background, the Reserve Bank of Australia ran a CBDC initiative, a pilot, over the last year. There were 140 projects were presented to that pilot. The purpose of the pilot was to research and discover more about real-world use cases for Australia that would use a central bank digital currency, a CBDC. The governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia over 2 years ago came out very publicly and said that they saw that there was a case for a wholesale CBDC, so a token exchange between the commercial banks and the central bank, so from an efficiency and operational perspective. But there was still a case to be made for retail CBDCs, so having central bank money in in the citizen's wallet, effectively, cash-like instrument. So pretty much all of the central banks across the planet are on a journey at the moment. Some are further advanced, like in the European Union and the UK and parts of Asia Pacific region, pretty far advanced. Some are live. I think we've got about 7 or 8 live CBDCs around the world right now. There are different approaches and different types of digital money that are being proposed. The CBDC is one of those. It tends to be based on a permissioned private blockchain. Some don't even have a blockchain underpinning it. And it tokenizes central bank money. So effectively zero risk money. If you're going to put a claim in on that token, you're going to the central bank rather than a commercial bank, which potentially has a run or could have, or it's certainly part of a fractional reserve lending system, so it's not as secure as central bank money. So that's kind of the differentiation. What the governor of the Reserve Bank said was that even though there was no case to be made for retail CBDCs, he was expecting, and there was evidence at that time, that private organizations, regulated institutions like banks would step into that gap and utilize what we call stablecoins. So a stablecoin being a token issued on a public ledger, which is fully backed by something in the real world, in this case, fiat. So we've got this spectrum from a CBDC at the wholesale level, something which may or may not be utilizable at a retail level, at a citizen level. Then we've got a stable coin, which is backed by cash, by fiat. And you've got different actors within those ecosystems, notwithstanding, the complexities of cross-border payments and interbank settlement across borders. So what the RBA pilot, in conjunction with an organization called the DFCRC, did was put out a call for projects. They got about 140 proposals for different types of projects for how one would use a CBDC. These are all potentially live projects. So the CBDC itself was set up in production. It was time limited. So it was a kind of real production environment that real pilot projects could utilize. And then those 140 projects were limited down to 14 that were part of the pilot as a whole. One of those was delivered by one of our systems integration partners, not centralized, great group of guys that are based here in Australia. And they implemented a project called Trade Flows, which is the use case that demonstrates a contract between some kind of tradesman and their customer that utilizes a stable coin that gets paid when the contract conditions are met. Basically a multi-sig contract that transfers value when all the signatures are received. So that was one of those projects and used a stablecoin. Now, stablecoins on Hedera have a number of different flavors. You could have just a smart contract-based one, utilizing the Hedera smart contract service. And an example of that would be what ANZ Bank did last year. They took their Solidity smart contract that they have on Ethereum and ported it onto Hedera, and just out of the box used it on the smart contracts service, our EVM. The second type is purely token service-based stablecoin. And an example of that is the USDC. So the Circle issued USDC on Hedera is an HTS token. They're both collateralized in a similar way with cash in escrow, or a fiat in escrow, but two different mechanisms. And then the third type is a hybrid model. And you've heard me refer to the stablecoin accelerator that Swirls Labs and Greg Scullard and his team have been developing. That has a Hedera token service token for wallet-to-wallet transfer, but it has all its administration functions via a smart contract, which enables you to set up role-based controls and keys on the functions of the token, so mint and burn and wipe and the KYC flag and all of those good things. So we've got three different types of stablecoin in the Hedera ecosystem. The latter is by far the best. It's bank grade. It comes out of the box with hooks into custody providers and fraud management tooling and auditing and token control mechanisms. So we're very excited about that open source technology, the stablecoin accelerator, which we will be able to talk a lot more about over the coming weeks, because there's some very, very exciting initiatives and announcements about to be made built around that technology. So going back to the question, that's kind of all scene setting. Going back to the question, what does a CBDC collateralized stablecoin mean? Well, in a world where a reserve bank has said we expect the retail spectrum of digital money to be filled by privately issued stablecoins, that led most of these 14 projects, actually maybe about half of the projects, to take that lead and utilize their stablecoins, the bank issued stablecoins, or a demonstrable version of one, as the medium of exchange, and within that use case. But being a CBDC pilot, they had to utilize the CBDC in some way, and it makes perfect sense to instead of collateralizing the stablecoin with an equivalent amount of fiat in an escrow account that's kind of redeemable against the stablecoin token. You collateralize it, you peg it to this zero risk, very, very secure central bank money. And in doing that, you kind of tie your stablecoin into a collateral, which, if everything went, south, you would be able to go and make a claim against the bank for that money, or the CBDC, which you would then ultimately be able to convert back to cash. So that's what a CBDC collateralized stablecoin is. And what was really interesting for me was that so many of these organizations independently decided that was a good use of the CBDC. I mean, there were some very good projects that utilized the CBDC directly. And they're all listed, and there are case studies on the DFCRC website that people can go and look at. But the really interesting thing was that stable coins are absolutely part of the equation when we're talking about CBDCs. And all the really interesting, fun for payments geeks like me, and innovative uses of digital money were in that kind of stablecoin space. And I expect us to really push forward on that front. And of course, as we say many times, a stablecoin issued on Hedera gives you micropayments out of the box. So micropayments then opens up a huge spectrum of new use cases that are then potentially available to us. So in this architecture, one could imagine bots and IoT devices and online streaming services and everything else, streaming value via micropayments. And those micropayments are enabled through stablecoins, and the stablecoins themselves are collateralized by a central bank money. That's an amazing world to consider, and we're very, very close to being able to do it.
Well, Rob, we covered so much today. I know you wanted to cover some more stuff, but I think we're going to have to hold it off until next week. I'm certainly looking forward to
That's
it.
fun.
But thank you so much for swinging by, and we'll catch up with everybody next week.
Thanks, Brandon. Cheers. Bye.
All right, so the next thing we're going to get into, this is going to be another one of our hard left turns. We're going to get into real-world asset tokenization, and one of the leaders, at least in our space, for that is Aberdeen. Can you tell us a little bit about what they're going to be doing here in early September?
So on September the 7th, the HBAR are having their first meetup in London, in the UK, sort of official one. As part of this meetup, we're going to have Aberdeen, of course, 508 billion assets under management in the UK out of Edinburgh. And we're also going to have DLA Piper, a global law firm. We're going to have all the HBAR barons there. So open invite, you can go onto the event there. But it's going to be themed around what is one of the most powerful emerging narratives within Web3 at the moment, which is real-world asset tokenization. In the past couple of months, we've seen Avalanche, another layer one, really go all in on this narrative, put a lot of money into this narrative. But we at Hedera have been doing this for the last sort of 3-4 years. Since the token service was around, since DLA Piper joined our council, we've been pursuing this regulation first, which is crucial. Regulation first real-world asset tokenization. DLA Piper with Toko have shown us through quarter homes that you can sort of fractionalize things like mortgages. They've also been fractionalizing and tokenizing real estate, artworks, these sort of traditionally illiquid assets. And to complement them, of course, we've got Aberdeen, who've now tokenized or in the works of tokenizing one of their major flagship funds with Arcax. So we've got two huge companies, both at the forefront of this narrative, both of whom are going to be presenting at this meetup. So a very exciting one. If you're in the UK, I will definitely be there, and I'm very excited to see all of us who managed to get there.
So you're actually going to be at this event?
Definitely.
So hear that you get to meet Zep if you go to that event. But Aberdeen is really doing a fantastic job. Because they tokenized that fund. As far as real world asset tokenization, we're in the number 2 spot behind Ethereum. And the only reason Ethereum is ahead of us is because all the stable coins that are tokenized on their platform. So it's good to see. I think real world asset tokenization, you mentioned Toko and so forth, is really going to be a great niche for Hedera to break into. And I think we have a lot of room to grow. All right. So the next thing we wanted to cover is the Hashpack Airdrop system. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So as we know, one of the core sort of community building or community engagement tools within Web3 is an airdrop. Some of the layer ones, when they, the big venture VC backed L1s, when they launch with an airdrop. We've seen it with layer 2s. We've seen it with all sorts of networks. But on Hedera, of course, we've got these sort of privacy preserving tools, or within the token service, you have things like Token Associate to make sure that you can't really get these sort of malicious drops or things like that. And so because of that, there's often been sort of friction around these kind of airdrop campaigns on Hedera, on the token service for whichever project's built. But Hashpack have now come out with their own airdrop system within the Hashpack app called the Airdrop Campaign Manager. And so through this, they're basically streamlining this process, making it as efficient as possible, making it as sort of as low code or rather no code as possible, so that anyone can really integrate it and use it within their own project or application that they're building on Hedera. So again, this is Hashpack showing core innovation, realizing what is a sort of friction point within the ecosystem. And I'm sure this will be used by lots of different projects, including the NFT community. So a great tool being provided there by Hashpack.
Continuing to build out that infrastructure. And of course, there's some great team members there on the Hashpack team. We have Nick, we have May. And that's where, initially when we started Hedera Forum with Jesse, we just wanted to feature different community members. We wanted to discuss things with community members. And another community member that is doing some fantastic work, we featured one of his songs at the end of the last one. And I'm going to put that song in this one as well. But Brandon D, he's an entrepreneur in this space. He hosts these Twitter spaces every Sunday where he covers the entire ecosystem. A good mirror, another thing to get involved with in addition to this show that we have. But I wanted to catch up with him because he has some great insights across the entire space. So listen to what Brandon D had to say. Brandon, thanks for coming. Welcome.
Good to be here, man. Big fan, and it's always exciting to come on the show.
Well, we've been in this space for a while, and it seems like we're kindred spirits. We like to cover a lot of the same stuff. We stay busy, that's for sure. But to kick this off, how did you get into the Web3 space to start with, and why did you choose to focus on Hedera?
It's funny. I mean, I had opportunities to get into the Web3 space earlier on, I guess kind of before it was referred to as Web3, when people were talking about Bitcoin, a decade ago,
Sure.
or Ethereum. And I don't know, to me, I was in the technology space, but I just, for me, the technology, it just didn't make sense initially for a lot of the reasons that are laid out now in kind of the Hedera world. But hindsight, yeah, probably should have, taken another look. And it turns out that blockchain technology is probably one of the greatest things that's ever happened. And I think that really what brought me into Web3 was a common story. It was Mike Maloney, right? And people, I can't remember when it was. I think it was just the holidays and I was killing some time. And there was that Secrets of Money series. And I was like, what is this? And I was watching it. I'm like, this is so great. This is fantastic. And on one of those episodes, he was talking about Hedera, or I guess Swirled more so at that time. I don't even know. Maybe it was 2017. Had Lehman on there. And right away, I was like, oh, this guy's talking about a lot of the things that I was thinking a while ago. And that really got me interested. Then I just started looking into things a little more. I think I saw your early Hedera form videos. And for me, the tipping point was, again, like most people, that Harvard speech that Lehman gave, where he presents the ideas of like what the industry is going to be. And especially too, talking about how they weren't wanting to develop just a better blockchain. They were doing something completely different that just happened to align with this industry. And that to me was just really when I started diving in. And again, getting into those Telegram groups, getting into those Discords, it was really when I got into the community that I realized there's really something special here that was different, not only from a lot of other Web3 communities, but just technology communities in general. And that was really exciting to me. And I think that when I first started investing and first started looking around, I was just like, I've never learned so much. It was so many people from so many different backgrounds. Like initially, there's so many precious metal guys, and even yourself with your background that are so different from me, but we were all kind of in this kind of Hedera world. So sure, it was learning about Hedera, getting excited about the technology, all those kinds of things. But I think what really sucked me in was just being with so many people from different backgrounds and different age groups, and really just kind of going, here's a idea space that so many things are going to come from. And that just still holds true now, even in the community. Every day I meet with somebody that's so far removed from my background. Now, especially that, this ecosystem's more and more global. That's what keeps me coming back. And I think that's kind of what got me into it.
Well, I think there's definitely, we love memes like everybody else. We're a bunch of degens at heart, but there's definitely a level of maturity and investigation that people like to do. They like to do research within our ecosystem, and it seems like they're trying to get to a place of truth. And there are some differences with other communities, but there's a lot of people from other communities that have come over and love the ecosystem as well. I've said this a bunch of times. It's hard to be in the Hedera community and not want to build. And you're certainly a great example of that. I love what you've done so far. Can you explain what you're working on and what you're trying to bring to market?
Really anything that I've done and anything that I've tried to do. And like you said, like I've done a lot of things across all sorts of different areas. But really for me, like when I got into this ecosystem and started to understand the landscape a little more broadly outside of, the Hedera bubble, is in the Hedera community, in the Hedera ecosystem, to me, and I talk about this on my show quite a bit, it's like, it feels like there's still these two worlds, right? We've got the enterprise governing council world that I think is a counterintuitive approach in crypto that's ultimately, I think, served Hedera really well. But there's a struggle resonating with the retail or community side of things. And then you've got the NFT builders, the degens, like all these other people that really do so many things that Hedera and the governing council celebrate. So it has felt like there's these two worlds, and we see it kind of play out where we see mismatches in communication and the distance between those two worlds. And I almost view it as like a little bit of a Venn diagram where you've got a little bit of overlap in the middle. And I kind of try to live there and try to grow that as much as I can, because I do work a lot in the kind of enterprise, behind the scenes type stuff. And then I also am like really embedded in the community. And I try to remain as independent as I can and work with as many people as I can, and just try to do whatever I can to bring those two worlds together a little more, closer together, because I think that's really what illustrates that pathway to decentralization is, can you get a shared world? Like, can we get to that vision, right? And for me, like when I got started off, I was like, well, if that's really the big issue here is this kind of disconnect, like I think it was kind of the same thing as you is what about a show? Like that's part of my background as I did podcasts. I had a, tech blog with 13 editors and stuff. So being in music, being in a rock band, just performing and stuff, I just like talking about topics I enjoy and learning and diving into these things. So I started the Hashgraph Enthusiast News and Rumors show on Clubhouse. If anyone remembers Clubhouse, I don't know if it's still around, but I started that in October 2021. I just like the live component, being able to bring people up. I think it wasn't something a lot of folks were doing in the space yet, so it felt fresh. And that show has grown now. I think on Twitter Spaces, we're averaging 500 listeners an episode. And then even more now that it's like available on, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and different stuff like that. And I've had a lot of great guests. Like I just had Carmel from MTech. I've had, Solo Cisse from Galaxy on. So, and having guests on was never part of the plan, really, just kind of turned into that. And I've been approached with, you want to do this advertisement or sponsor the show in this way. And I kind of went, maybe I'll go the community support route, contributions in HBAR. So the show is, completely supported by the community, and I'm going to be getting some equipment for it and everything. So that year, that's when NFTs were just starting to take off on Hedera. I don't know if folks remember, but in 2021, kind of in the fall, that's when we just got the ability to do NFTs on Hedera. And again, trying to bring those two worlds together, trying to enhance the experience. Like one way that you can enhance the experience on like within an industry or within a technology is art. I'm a big believer that artists generally drive the adoption of new technology in a lot of ways. When you look at, just general consumers, just the other 95% of people out there. And so I did Pixel Rug. It's probably one of the favorite things that I do. And it was kind of the original 3D collectible on Hedera. At that time, I think there was maybe one or two other 3D collectibles that you could kind of spin around, but you couldn't really look at them in a wallet at all yet at that time. So it was a really difficult thing to make a product that you couldn't really see in your wallet. It was really weird. But the purpose of it was if you could make a product people love, the wallets and the ecosystem would serve those experiences. That's what Pixel Rug is about to me. Is it's a project where I can help push forward that adoption and innovation of 3D artwork in a really simple way. It's a really simple product, but I was able to do some cool things like the first Hedera Metaverse, where we had many meetups in there. It was also one of the first multi-file NFTs. So when HIP 412, which I helped work on with May from Hashpack and Patches from Turtle Moon and so many other folks, I was honestly like a pretty small part of that, but I really advocated for multi-files, getting an NFT that had multiple files inside of it, and being able to make a product that had that, I think really grabbed people's attention. I wrote an article on the Hedera blog, and I think that when you can create products that spark people's imaginations and really makes them feel like they can do something cool, that's, I think, how kind of experiences start to move forward. And we see that in all sorts of different areas of the ecosystem. Through that, Pixel Rug is so amazing because when you have artwork, like in the business world, at the time when I was doing a lot of business in Web 2, I was also in a rock and roll band. And it's a great thing because when you talk to people, you can talk about music, you can talk about art, and it changes people's perspectives and the way that they think about things. And with Pixel Rug, I would be meeting with a lot of enterprise people in the space, builders, startups, and being able to talk as kind of like an artist with an NFT project that many of them held themselves and enjoyed. It just created that connection. And I started to learn a lot about the ecosystem and what the pain points were. And the number one thing that I heard from builders was the ability to tell stories, right? And when you're in an industry that's this new, you get these ideas, you develop these minimum viable products, you have these startups, but you get to a certain point where the winners are really able to tell stories. And most importantly, they're able to tell stories bigger than themselves, right? Like that's the big thing. And how to do that, is really difficult. And it's even more difficult when it's just you and your startup or project. You know, there's that common saying where it's like you're so deep in the woods you can't see the trees. And I have a creative firm with a long-term business partner of mine, creative collaborator, great friend, Joshua Dirksen. Basically, we said, here's an opportunity. There are no creative firms in this space right now that's able to work with smaller projects, and especially heading into a bear market. Being able to make some of those decisions for your project and articulate those ideas and develop an identity for what you're doing. Really, when you get to a certain point in your project, you realize how important that is and how hard it is. And we've been really fortunate to work with a lot of awesome projects I look up to and kind of help them do those things. Because if you can do those things in a bear market, it just positions you so well for a bull market when things change, because they do. And that's just been incredible. And then that led me to something else that was really important, which was bringing people together. There's a great kind of like really famous incubator called Y Combinator in the kind of startup space, in the tech space. And also there's, you know, Anderson Horowitz, but Y Combinator is really interesting because they discovered that the number one accelerant for successful startups and companies was bringing them together. And a lot of times you're building in isolation. And I had an opportunity to be a part of working groups for the DeFi space, like the DeFi Alliance, the Hashgraph DeFi Alliance. Now there's the Hashgraph DAO working group, and also the Hashgraph NFT working group. And it's these working groups that are comprised of leaders in those respective spaces in the ecosystem that have been working for a year at this point on all sorts of things. And all of these peers and competitors that we all know and love join bi-weekly calls and work through issues and ideate and discuss topics of the day. And I chair the operations committee for those working groups because I realize part of this also, again, especially in a bear market, is like kind of donating your time. Is like, if you really believe in this technology, you want to spend time being at the center of it. And if you have something to bring to the table, bring it. And I'm good at hosting conversations. And, you know, these types of things really are just conversations at the end of the day. So I've been really fortunate to be in that position to help bring all these people together and work through a lot of these ideas. And, you know, with the DeFi Alliance, standards, security, safety, education, like so many incredible things happening there. The Hashgraph DAO working group focusing on tooling for voting and actually putting into action so many different things. That group, the members have NFTs and they use those NFTs to vote on decisions within the group, utilizing the Turtle Moon voting platform. So, and then the Hashgraph NFT working group focusing on music metadata standards, right? And advocating for HIP 657, which is dynamic NFTs. When you get these people together, it's kind of like, 1 + 1 = 3 type thing, something greater than the sum of its parts. So I feel like a lot of my work in this ecosystem has led me to a place where what I can do best is leveraged in the best way. And I'm just so fortunate. I don't talk about this a lot, but I'm just so fortunate to be in these working groups and help them do these things, because I just think the work they're doing is just so important. And then most recently, of course, is the Hello Future music NFT, which, I mean, I was watching the last episode of your show and I was like, oh my God, I was kind of like fanboying out at the end too with the music video in there. I was like, no way.
Great.
Like, yeah, bucket list moment. So I mean, a lot to pack into a little bit here, but I've just been doing so much. There hasn't been a ton of time to talk about it, but I just can't wait for all of the incredible things that are going to happen, because I get to see on a weekly basis major players in the ecosystem get together and have just the most incredible conversations. So I couldn't be more bullish on the ecosystem than ever. It's amazing.
Oh, Brandon, you have a great philosophy all around. You're working on so many important things. If people want to watch that news and rumors, when can they watch it and participate live?
So I do it every Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, on, I guess it's called X Spaces now. And It's also available on all major podcast platforms. All you got to do is search up Hashgraph Enthusiast News and Rumors. The show's there, lots of great guests, and I basically try to go in depth on all the news and rumors, get a little speculative, which I enjoy. And sometimes unexpected things happening. It's live. So go and check it out. And people can support the show. And if you go to itsbrandond.com/HBAR, you can find all you need to know.
I really do like that format that you use on that show, but is there anything else you'd like to pass on before we let you go?
I would say something that's come to my mind recently, I think a lot of people, and I talked about this on the show last episode, is there's been a lot of kind of conversation between, the Algorand community, the Solana community, the Bitcoin community, the Hedera community, and just I've been seeing all that. And the other thing that we talk about a lot is how can we get outside this bubble, right? How can we expand to other networks? And unfortunately, with a lot of these conversations, sometimes it forces people back into their own respective bubbles. And one thing that I love about Hedera that's right in the core values of it is it's the trust layer for the internet or other networks, right? And what I want to say to the community is, in a lot of these cases, when we look at these other networks and we're talking about my network versus your network and what's better on this network and what's better than that network, there are networks out there that are better at some things than Hedera. That's the reality. But also Hedera is really good at so many things. And this is an opportunity not only for us to learn about our network, because it causes folks like, leaders at the UCL, publishing huge threads about how they came up with their research paper, right? Or crazy insights from Swirlds Labs developers, like really hitting the key points and what we should be focused on. It causes a lot of this to happen as a byproduct, which is an opportunity to learn. But also we can approach this as, how can Hedera make other networks better? Because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed to be a trust layer for other networks. So if we can approach this from a space of, what can we do with this network to make this other network better? It's just better for the whole space. If one network doesn't do well, it's not good for the ecosystem. It's not good for Hedera. If these other networks get better, it just makes the whole ecosystem better. So I think that right now I'm trying to remind myself that's really what the core value proposition of Hedera is it is a trust layer. And there are many networks out there that are in need of one. So I think that is a pathway to expand out from our bubble and kind of grow the crypto space overall.
Well, I couldn't agree more. You mentioned your Hello Future anthem. I put it at the end of the show last week, but I think everybody needs to hear it. So we're going to put it in right here in the middle and let everybody listen to what you guys created.
Hey, rock on.
Hello, future. I see you coming round. Are you ready? 'Cause it's going down. Hold on, steady. We're lifting off the ground. You know all
Yeah, Zep, I'm not 100% sure. We have all these great enterprise use cases, but there's so many great community members that are building things out of their garage, so to speak. Whether it's Saucer Swap, whether it's some of the stuff that Brandon D is doing, whether it's Hashpack or even Twigital, right? Some of these small businesses could really explode. And I'm really not sure which ones are going to have more of an impact on the space. But do you have any thoughts on what Brandon D is working on?
Yeah, I mean, Brandon has been, like you said, one of the long-term core contributors to our ecosystem and to our community. And to see him, really leverage the tools is what I love to see. I'm not a builder. I can talk about the building, I can talk about the ecosystem and help with marketing and this kind of stuff. But Brandon really does leverage the infrastructure, like yourself, of course, and builds out applications, builds out projects using the hash graph. And I think, to have him pioneering, the music side of our community, especially, he's himself a musician, as we saw last week. I think that's going to be a real big force to have behind us when something like HIP 657 comes out, which was, worked upon by Brandon and Patches and May and Ash and beyond. And I think Hedera is obviously uniquely placed with its hash graph, but the NFT ecosystem, especially being able to support all these file types now with the sort of dynamic NFT hip in the world or in the works, I think Brandon's impact is only going to become greater and greater after that. So a massive shout out to Brandon for everything he does, and looking forward to following his sort of music career on Hedera especially.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch. We have another great community team that's building in the space, and that's Earthlings. And they're going to be giving us some more things that we can get our hands on. Now we're getting some applications that we can really get out there and use. We have Galaxy, we have Karate Combat, and of course, we're going to be going more into that a little bit later on. But Earthlings is going to have a mini game coming out. So I caught up with their team. They have some other initiatives that they wanted to talk about. So let's listen to what the Earthlings team had. Patrick, welcome back.
Thank you for having me back again. It's a pleasure. And this time I'm not alone. I came prepared with my buddy Joey.
Good stuff.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming, Joe. So to start off, Patrick, or Joe, whoever's going to be better for this question, can you tell us about the Earthlings Gaming Metaverse Land Mint that you have coming up and how people are going to be able to participate?
Absolutely. It starts on September the 12th. What we've done is expanded our land from the towns and villages that people may have seen. We're going to have a total of 8,700 town and village plots available. We really want to expand our user base and have more people participate in what we're doing. So with the land plots, they start on September 12th. It's not going to be necessarily a race to mint these. We're going to have a lot of whitelist spots available. It's going to come in separate rounds. So round one is going to be a whitelist based first step, which people will be able to get whitelist from some of our projects that we work with. They're going to be able to go directly to our Discord and Twitter to win these whitelists. If you hold a founder's card, you're automatically going to get a whitelist and a deed for a plot. We call the automatic plots deeds because they are property. With that, you'll be able to enter into the mint if you have a whitelist. And round one is only going to be $25 equivalent in HBAR for that mint. Once the whitelist round is over, we are going to open up the public with a minimum of 400 plots available in round one for public. That'll last for a couple of days, those two rounds. Round two will start 1 week later on September the 19th. So everybody needs to keep an eye out on Twitter, because a lot of other projects are going to be giving out our whitelist as well as Earthlings. So maybe you might not be involved in Earthlings yet, but you have a favorite project that you follow. Good chance that they're going to offer some whitelist opportunities on Twitter or in their Discord.
All right. So am I going to be able to get some of these whitelists to give out to some of our viewers?
Absolutely. Look at Patrick's smile. Yes, of course. You'll have some whitelists to give out. I think we're going to do some cool game nights within our own community. A lot of the nice things about this land mint for people that are gamers that may have heard about Earthlings, but they're more into gaming. They want to know what's going to happen. Why would I need a land plot? A big part of it is ownership. You want to own something in metaverse or gaming. And with Earthlings, that's the opportunity we provide. But for gamers with these plots, they're not super expensive, and you're going to be able to use your plot to jump around on our map. And we have a very large map, which is Europe. So say you have a plot in Eastern Europe and then a plot on the other side of the continent. Without traveling on a train or airship across the map or walking, you can actually jump from one plot to another. So there's a good function to owning those plots other than just saying you own a piece of the metaverse in Earthlings.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. So this next question I have comes from my daughter, Patrick. She has become obsessed with Earthlings. She loves all the graphics you guys put out, all the clips you put out. But a few months ago, we heard about the Earthlings mini game. When can we expect to play that?
Well, actually, quite soon. Maybe not the full version, but the beta version for testing and for practicing. Actually, so have you girls practicing there? Can be played quite soon already. I'll send you a nice clip where you can see the first in-game run where I test it out, and maybe I'll send you a very early beta version. But keep this between us because everyone will spare me for one as well. But the fun thing about this is this was actually supposed to be just a teaser game, but while we were building, we were seeing that if we do this, we need to do it very well because people will already look at what the game will look like and compare it to what's to be expected. So while we were doing this, actually, we were adding on and more and more and more, and we're changing some things as well. So we're expanding a lot on it. There's going to be a multiplayer as well, and that's going to be the real fun part, I think. So if your daughters are going to practice there, that will be so much fun because maybe they'll beat me and Joey in team play. That will be fun. So a lot is coming there. I think if I have to guess, don't pin me on this. I think in a couple of weeks, we could throw out a beta version already to the community to just do some test runs and do some practice runs. But the integration of earning Steam and Water, our two tokens, will be coming a bit later as we first need to wait for the token launch, of course. And of course, Jorgo, that's our programmer and founder, you know him, who does the integration of this part, needs to be done very safely as well. He's going to have to do his thing as well. But yeah, I expect a couple of weeks for the community to already do a test run. But I'll send you some footage so that you can show it. And if the programmer agrees on it, I'll send you a WeTransfer with the first beta version. Just.
All right. Well, I'll let her know. So these games take a lot of time and resources to develop. I love how you keep the community engaged during this process, but when can we expect the full production Earthlings game to hit the market?
Well, as you know, that's a multi-year build, of course, and depending on how much budget we're still going to get in, it's going to go slower or faster. I expect something in 2025 so that people can already get a taste of the real big gameplay. In the meantime, we'll be building multiple sidekick games or mini games, whatever you want to call them, to keep the community engaged, to keep them engaged with also maybe earning Water and Steam. So that's going to be fun. And also earning NFTs in these sidekick games, because we envision to build something like, well, you know, Gala games, I guess, where we have multiple games but below our main project, main gameplay. So that's something that we are working on a lot to make it even more fun also in this journey towards the bigger game. When we open up, it will be already fun with a lot of things to do. For instance, you could go to an arcade hall and already do mini games there, arcade playing. So it's not just going to be an open meet and greet world, but you can already do some stuff. But the quests and those things, yes, they will be integrated bit by bit over the coming years.
Well, I've enjoyed the journey so far. I'm sure it's going to be really enjoyable, and I can't wait for the actual main game to come out here in a couple years, but we'll have plenty to do between now and then. Guys, thank you so much for swinging by and giving us an update.
Oh, thank you so much.
And thank you for having us again. Speak later.
So, Zeb, it's great to hear from the Earthlings team, and I am going to be part of that whitelist initiative, so certainly keep an eye out for that. Moving on to the next thing. Now, I jumped the gun a little bit because I got some information about Validation Cloud out a while ago, but they have some really exciting things that are coming out right now. Can you give us a little bit of insight what came out on the blog, the HBAR Foundation blog this week around Validation Cloud?
Yeah, so Validation Cloud are the fastest RPC node provider globally, and they've now integrated with Hedera to perform the function of a mirror node as a service and also to integrate the RPC relay into our EVM. And so Validation Cloud is sort of some of the standard EVM tooling that a lot of other chains have that are really pushing for their EVM equivalence, is what people say. You know, getting as close to the actual EVM, the Ethereum EVM, as possible in terms of developer tooling, in terms of developer infrastructure, and things like this node relay. So, of course, this is the next step in Swald's and Hedera's and Foundation's overarching sort of strategy of making sure our EVM is as performant as possible. The industry at the moment is rallying around the EVM. You know, we've seen it with many banks, many bank trials, you know, with ANZ and others. They've understood that the EVM is a critical piece of blockchain infrastructure. And so at Hedera, we can build on the EVM and not just mirror it, but go a step beyond that. You know, we can create things like hybrid stablecoins that have the inherent benefits of the programmability of the token service, whilst upholding, you know, the benefits of the interoperability layers and things like this of the EVM. So I think the closer we get to EVM equivalence through tools like Validation Cloud, the stronger we position ourselves, especially on an institutional level, where the institutions are looking at the EVM. They don't need to do it on Ethereum. They can come over to Hedera, like we saw with ANZ Bank. You know, started with Ethereum, moved across to Hedera. So this, to me, is a step in a positive direction towards that end goal of equivalence, and the equivalence will only drive further institution and retail adoption.
Well, they're giving those necessary tools to the traditional developers out there. And if anybody wants to watch the clip that I did a few weeks ago, it is on that blog on the HBAR Foundation site. So you can check that out. But we have the Hedera dev himself, who has had some success recently. We have Milan. What came out around that this week?
Yep. So Milan, he created during the Tribe hackathon. He actually did very well in the Tribe hackathon. He created the GeoTap app, which is a way for sort of individuals to validate their presence, their physical presence at specific locations. So, you know, you can see this in any sort of, you can use it like a POAP if you attend a conference. We mentioned last time on something like the National Trust, which is one of the environmental institutions in the UK, being able to prove your location at a certain spot to achieve something like a reward or a sticker or whatever it might be. It's a way of sort of gamifying real life. And so Milan has, of course, built this on Hedera, the consensus service, the token service, and he has now been picked up by the next stage of Tribe's overarching project here, which is the incubator stage. So Milan is now taking GeoTap from Hackathon to incubator, where he gets to meet some of the strategists, some of the, you know, the Web3 thought leaders from that company, and the ones that can really help him bring that idea to scale. So very exciting times for Milan, an exciting time for the wider community as well. And I hope that, yeah, all the best for Milan in that incubator phase.
And he does much of what he works on all with no code, and he tries to give tools to other people that want to build within the ecosystem in a no code way as well. We're going to have Hello Future Live, so that's going to be on October 6th, and I think they're going to have a feature of GeoTap there, so we're certainly looking forward to what they come out with. But congratulations to Milan. I'm also going to be doing a Twitter space, and I'm not sure, it's going to be within the next few weeks with the HBAR Foundry, and I know Milan is really involved with that as well. All right, so the next thing we want to touch on, we were wondering last week, you know, where are all these accounts coming from? And I have a pretty good idea after seeing what came out this week around Karate Combat, where it might have come from, because I know they have tons of accounts that need to be created, and they do a lot of that beforehand in the lead up. They pre-create those accounts to facilitate that. But Karate Combat now has their Android app, and, you know, in the United States, I think it's even. You have about as many iOS devices as you do Android, but throughout the rest of the world, it's like 2-to-1. Android to iOS. So it's really going to be important for the Karate Combat app, the up-only gaming, everything else they're trying to build within the ecosystem to have this Android support. Did you have any thoughts around this?
We saw how far Karate Combat has come. We've seen, you know, the partnerships they're coming out with again and again with wider Web3 companies, but also Web2 companies. And we saw the impact that first launch of the iOS app had on our network, on our active accounts, and also just in terms of spreading the news that this retail ecosystem exists on Hedera beyond institutions. So, you know, like you said, Android is a massive market. We've seen some of the first instances of those accounts come onto the mainnet, and I would like to see, with each concurrent event that happens, each big Karate Combat event, we'll see those active user accounts go up and hopefully pull them into other things like our DeFi NFT ecosystem. So, of course, Karate Combat, one of the champions of our ecosystem, and exciting for everyone to be able to now, who has an Android, also get involved in Up Only.
Again, one of those hands-on applications that we get so excited about. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get some network analysis. So over the past 24 hours, we have 126 million transactions. We have a max TPS of 6,800 and an average TPS really pushing 1,500 transactions per second. All right, Zeb, but there's another metric that was highlighted by Brady that is also really important, and that's open source developer activity. And right now, it's all up and to the right, and it seems to be even accelerating. Right now, there's only a couple chains, at least on this chart, that were above us, and that's Polkadot and Cardano. And where we're sitting right now, it puts us above things like Solana, Avalanche, and Algorand. So these are some pretty impressive metrics, don't you think, Zep?
Polkadot and Cardano, they have two very, very strong developer communities that can't be contested with from an objective statement. They've got a very strong developer community. They put a huge amount of money into that developer community, and that's why they're at the top. But Hedera is sort of coming out of nowhere here. We're above some of the big VC coins. We see us above Internet Computer. We see us above NEAR, above Solana, which is exceptional considering how much money they put into their sort of developer ecosystem. But specifically, I think of note is Avalanche. Avalanche have multiple dev events a year, in high growth regions like Turkey and beyond. But they put 4 or 5 out of these out a year, in-person developer events. And Hedera, which doesn't have these Hedera branded events, but goes to these events and helps. We saw Ed Marquez talking recently. We saw Swirls talking recently. Hedera is doing what seems so much more with less in that sense. We are sort of coming out of nowhere, and that's a testament to Swirls. It's a testament to the foundation, Hedera, and the ease of access for Web 2 developers moving into Hedera. It uses the common Web 2 languages, developer languages like Java, JavaScript, so on, so that these institutions, these individuals, when they come over, Web 3 isn't a leap into the dark. It's very familiar, but they now have the utility that it offers whilst maintaining their sort of original code base. What is extraordinary is beyond where we are now on this chart, this comes before Bharat Blockchain Yatra, which is the biggest Web3 event in India. And so there's 50,000 plus developers at this conference. It's spread all across India. India is one of the fastest growing tech countries in the world, has the highest population in the world. The premier sponsor is the Hashgraph Association, and by virtue of that, Hedera. And so throughout the hackathon, we're going to have educational events. We're going to have powered by Hedera everywhere, and the ease of access for these developers to build on the Hashgraph as the premier blockchain above others. So the pool of developers that could come from this conference alone is staggering. It is also organized by IDS, who have partnerships with the Indian government, who have got a contract with the Indian government to really turbocharge Web3 innovation. And of course, Hedera is alongside them there. And I think last week we even heard Rob mention that the target is sort of 500,000 new developers from the Indian government through IDS. And so, it really seems that we're at the start of the hockey stick curve for adoption of our mainnet, but also developer activity. So very excited to see what those numbers look like in the coming weeks, coming months.
Yeah, we're already starting to see it accelerate, and I think this Yatra is only going to make that trend continue. All right, so let's get into some of these other metrics. So still super impressive. The time to consensus, the time to finality is only 3.87 seconds right now. And Zeb, what are we looking at for account creation?
Yeah, so, as we touched on earlier, one of the big account contributors has been Karate Combat's launch of the Android app. And this week we've seen over 177,000 new accounts on the mainnet, which of course is, a pretty staggering statistic there when you take into consideration that we only had under 1 million when the foundation was created. Now we have over 3 million, and 315,000 of those have been in the last month. So our account creation is definitely going through the roof, and that's obviously in correlation between the retail ecosystem, new eyes in the ecosystem, and we would like to assume that's only going to get higher when we see things like AR Rahman and these kind of use cases that we've got in the background that we still haven't launched yet.
Certainly impressive. All right, so taking a look at our fungible tokens, Wrapped HBAR used for our DeFi ecosystem is in the top spot, followed by the meme coin Zero. Energy Trade token is in there because of their faucet. There's Sauce from Saucer Swap. Dovu's in there, going back to our discussion from Shark Bites, and XSauce, USDC, Hella, and HBAR round out the top 10. And moving down to our NFTs, we have the Karateka gear cards in the number 1 slot over the past week, followed by the Road Code Access. And I see Source. I'm really not sure what that one is. We have Earthlings, the Hashpack themed backpack NFT. There's a Pepe NFT, Hashgraph stamps, Tiny Toys, and of course the World Cup token. We were talking about that last week. And then we have the actual Karateka playable fighters. All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and get into some DeFi. Taking a look at DeFi Llama, not including state or liquid staking, the total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem stands at $34.2 million. Nearly $30 million of that comes from Saucer Swap, 3.8 on Hella Swap, and a bit under $500,000 on Pangolin. Taking a look at the returns on some of Saucer Swap's popular trading pairs, HBAR is at about 7%, 28% on HBAR Sauce, 41% on HBAR USDC, and 37% on HBAR Karate. Moving over to Hella Swap, HBAR Heli is at 69%, HBAR USDC at 34%, and HBAR Karate is at 38%. Taking a look at the crypto and HBAR markets, despite some gyrations, the crypto market is flat to slightly down over the past week. Bitcoin is down about 0.6% on the day and the week. And at the time of recording, HBAR is at about 5.9 cents, up about 1% on the week. I'm still keeping an eye on this trend line at about 5.6 cents for support. We also have the symmetrical wedge that we're testing the lower limit of, so we'll see how that one plays out. For resistance, we can also look at 6 and 6.5 cents. All right, Zeb, that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, I think the standout for me this week was the sort of community sentiment, the community momentum, and just how great, the HBARbarians are at these sort of things like community rebutals, like we saw with Juan and beyond, but also just sort of spreading the word in this sort of respectful way that really, really helps us across all metrics. Our social metrics have been going through the roof. We've seen us top out on the alt rank for 2 days in a row in a single week with Lunar Crush. We've seen HBAR trending very consistently, very regularly. And we've seen more life in our community, I think, than we've seen in a while. We've seen some great figures like HBAR 1000 get active again. And it seems like it's across our Discord, our Telegrams, and just sort of everywhere. And I think, crucially, if we can keep this momentum going, that we're building in a bear market into a more stable market, I think it's going to be great things, both from just raising awareness, but raising awareness for developers and applications and everything else that entails. So I think for me, we are doing an amazing job at building this momentum at the moment, and all we've got to do is sustain it. And of course, that's difficult, but I definitely believe that combined with the announcements to come from Hedera on Hedera, that is something that we can definitely do, and I hope that together we'll keep that going.
Certainly well said, Zep. But one of the things that I have to think about is a lot of this momentum that you're talking about has been built up because of announcements that have been coming out around Hyundai, around Fresh Supply Co. and what they're doing with MasterCard. Of course, the Fed now and Dropp news. This is what's building up the momentum, and it's been through the summer. The summer is not a time when we generally see a lot of these announcements. They prefer to do it during the fall because during the summer, a lot of people are on vacation. They're not paying attention. So we could see this accelerate going into the fall, at least from a seasonal standpoint. Next week, I'm still going to try to get Fresh Supply Co. for that Twitter space, so you can certainly look forward to that. I'm going to try to get the Foundry on as well. I certainly want everybody to drop their questions down in the comments for Rob, because we want to continue that Shark Bites. It's been great every single week, and we've been getting some great questions, so I certainly appreciate that. That's all we have. We'll see you next week.